Sure. So a little bit about myself. As I already mentioned, I'm the Chief Medical Officer here. Before this, I was a Deputy Director with Cedar, FDA at Cedar. And then prior to that, I was with NCI at the NIH and also at the Clinical Center, where I ran one of their large research databases at the Clinical Center at NIH. I've focused a great deal of my career on looking at standards, looking at fire, and really the regulatory landscape. How do we take advantage of these standards to simplify and standardize the data that comes across from both our sponsors and then ultimately into our regulators that allow them to look at the standardized data and make those types of regulatory decisions, about safety and efficacy for the products that we all take every day. So if we're looking at the importance of the US CDI, we have to remember that where US CDI started. So US CDI really is that baseline of fire data that's required by all of the current EHRs in the United States. So we have a baseline of interoperable data that can be shared between a variety of entities. And with clinical trials, this is critical because there's a great deal of data that's in there, which, for example, in our cardiology trials, how do we measure something as simple as a heart rate or as an EKG or any of those types of simple measurements that when you're in a clinician's office seems simple, but when they get translated into the EHR and then ultimately into a clinical trial, the standards around that become very important. What is it that we exactly mean by a systolic and diastolic? What are the ranges? And when is it out of range? Oftentimes the numbers aren't as important as whether something is within range or out of range. And that's where the US CDI will help us standardize these things and give us that baseline set of data that our clinical researchers can build on for the additional therapeutic areas.